Well, Merry fucking Christmas, ho ho ho. It's actually Christmas Eve, and that's what convinced me to come up and do one of these. I was worried I was seeing my breath. If I can see my breath, I probably need to feed a little bit more heat into the house. So that's how the mold happens. It's very cold outside, like for where I am. Like daytime below freezing, I think. I see ice everywhere. But this is, not the first Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve was always a special day. I don't know if I said that. When you're very young, there's sort of the, ooh, Santa's coming and all that. And, you're so excited about all the changes happening around, all the decorations and everything. But that lasted for quite some time for me. I can remember, and I'm sure it lasts much, much longer for other people, but I can remember, sorry, nasty shit up from my lungs. Sort of those teen years and later teen years, still enjoying the festivity of it all, the tree up and everything. My parents had become sort of less attached. They used to have more friends, and we would have, when I was about, I don't know, had to be 12, 13, right? It can't be that old, no. Can it? Say around 9 or 10. 9 or 10. That's about the right period. We lived in a different town, had a huge house that was perfect for having parties. And my mom was always really, really big on Christmas, and so. But my parents had friends then, for a few years there, and then we moved towns, and I don't know what happened, but sort of all connection with humanity between my family and sort of everything else kind of, I don't know, melted away a little bit. I'm not sure what changed. In the one place, my dad was new at his work and maybe more involved in school, in the college that he was at, in the social scene there. And then later on, maybe once he was tenured and everything, maybe that extra burden was no longer important to him. But my mom still would decorate, heavily, in very traditional sort of way. We would, get sort of the biggest tree we could fit in whatever house it was, which in the house in Goshen, with its 15-foot ceiling, was quite a huge tree. The one year that really, really sticks with me there is we got the biggest tree we had ever had, and it went in the ballroom. Yeah, we had a ballroom. I mean, for real. Parquet floor. But that was such a weird room. We always kept that completely cold during the winter. Because there were rooms we would just shut off, so that we didn't have to pay heat for them. And that was one of them. And it turned out the heat didn't really work in it. And it was too big for the little coal fireplace that all the rooms had. Well, no, not all of them. The bedrooms actually didn't have fireplaces, which was kind of neat. Maybe the master bedroom did, but my bedroom and the guest room next to it, neither of them had a fireplace. They had heaters, and we would turn those on, and try to use them. But the problem was there was one thermostat for the entire house, and because my dad didn't want the pipes to freeze, he would turn it down as low as it would go, which was 55, and then put a light bulb next to it. So that made, at night especially, that made perfect sense, when you're talking about most of the house. But the radiators in the bedrooms were tied to that same thermostat and would not go on most of the time. And it was funny because, I would lay out my clothing for the next day on the radiator, and it usually wouldn't be on. But if I was lucky, my dad got up early enough, and on most days, my dad would get up early enough and move the light away so that the heat actually went up to 55. And that way, my mom and I, who would wake up later, would have our clothing heat up. Because we would keep it on the radiator to just warm up. Old, water radiators. Which, I always thought were horrible back then. But then when I had one in an apartment later on, they were fine. In fact, they overheated the place because, again, we didn't have control of our own heat. So our way of modulating the overheated apartment, constantly overheated, was to leave windows open. I'm so happy. This is something that definitely seems common in Oregon because I've seen it in a couple different places here. But the concept of zonal heaters, little air-powered heaters that you turn on in each room as you like. Now, I have crappy, baseboard stuff in the main areas of the house, which may make sense because it's fairly large out here. But again, I control them individually. They'll have little switches on the heater itself. There's a thermostat somewhere, but it doesn't, in a number of rooms, but it seems to be, some legacy thing. It doesn't work in, trying to think if the thermostat works in any room. Yes, in the bathrooms the thermostats work. But the bathrooms have also a more modern heating situation. Well, in the two bathrooms upstairs, because they have floor heating, which is very cool, but actually warm and toasty on the feet. It's really a nice invention for small rooms. And the zonal is very good, for reasonable sized rooms, but the only thing that heats up the main area of the house here is the wood stove. Now, in addition to in that rundown mansion, it really looked like the Addams Family house from the outside, and the inside it did too, except it was run down. Because we had weird things in the house, and in addition to the gas, actually, I think it was an oil furnace that ran the water-heated radiators. There was an old coal furnace that my dad used to burn wood in, but it wasn't well maintained. Some of the connections didn't work, so he went in and put stuff to prevent heat from going to a lot of places, like insulation stuff or something, probably asbestos, and there was really only one room that was significantly heated by the wood furnace, by the coal furnace that we were burning wood in, which was our kitchen. And he put a fan inside the vent for that and just pumped heat there. He went to at least one other room he went into the tunnel for the rose room. Um, there were a lot of rooms in that house, which is where we normally. That was the equivalent to kind of a pleasant sort of living room type situation. Still fucking huge, but not the ridiculous size that the ballroom was, and that was where we held our Christmases most years. But one year we put it in the ballroom, and that was a year in which, and the only year that we noticed this, but that the ballroom leaked. It obviously had done so in the past. There were stains in the gold leaf wallpaper there, one of which looked like a body that was behind the wall in one place. And I mean, there were things like part of the ceiling had caved in where the chandelier had been, and it was just so crazy there. But yeah, I remember my best present of the year one of my best presents of the year having gotten dampened and kind of damaged because of it. And that was the baseball encyclopedia. It was, this, all the stats basically, this huge hardbound book that my cousin had gotten me. But then after a few years there, that house was breaking my dad. Not just was it financially impossible to keep heating it and everything, but it was also he was doing the paint job on it, and it took like a whole summer, him up on scaffolding to paint one side of the house. And by the time he got around and had gotten all the house painted, it was already clear that that he had to start again. Now, I don't understand that. I think if he had hired professional painters, things might have gone better, because I've never seen a house that needed to be painted every 4 years, right? And that's basically what he's saying, is he painted one side and then 4 years later he'd have to go back and do it, and that just didn't make sense. I don't know who we ended up selling it to, but it ended up in the hands of a Bentley dealer. And the guy really, this is someone who had enough money to really take care of it. And put in, like a huge heated driveway. I mean, the driveway was already there. It was this big curving thing. He had it all paved and heated. We had just, stones on it. But the sad thing was, there were a couple of things in the outside of the house that were really, really kind of important to me. One of them was the carriage house, which was, larger than my current place. But it was built like a little miniature of the house. And, inside, it was obviously like, a stable and garage for carriages and whatnot. And up above there was a hayloft and stuff like. I wasn't allowed to go up there because it wasn't it wasn't in good shape. The attic wasn't in good shape either. Although I was allowed to go there, I wasn't allowed to go into all areas, because in some areas the floor was not really there. And one of my 4 rooms in that house, I'm like 9, 10 years old and I have 4 rooms to myself. Just because, rooms were cheap, man. You're not getting it heated though. But one of them was the cupola, the tower up at top. And that was just a great place, to bring friends, but it was such a hike to get up there. We didn't go up there very often. But yeah, that was an amazing thing. But anyway, they tore down the carriage house. Apparently it was structurally unsound. I think it should have been saved. It was really awesome. And there was a humongous blue spruce, like taller than the house, and the house was pretty tall. that somebody somehow had kept. You know how pine trees, eventually like start growing and they have a trunk, and the branches don't grow at the bottom. Somebody had somehow managed to shape this thing, and so it was like just the perfect Christmas tree. There was no way to decorate. I mean, it was just we'd have to get a cherry picker there to decorate it if we'd wanted to. But it was just such a beautiful tree, and I don't know. Anyway, the one Christmas that I really remember most there was really kind of a bittersweet thing because I loved that we were in that room, but it sucked that it was cold and damp, and then presents got ruined. Then we moved to a much, much smaller place, and Christmases became kind of a lower key affair. Now, when my parents, after I went to college, my parents built a barn and moved to that, and started doing more dramatic kind of decorations again, but not to the degree, my mom was getting older and whatever, and although my brother was still young, so for a few years, they really did Christmas there as well, but there was a lot of family dysfunction, both right in the immediate family, but also my cousin would be, for a long time, basically, after I moved out of that decrepit mansion, the Christmas, the whole Christmas period revolved around my cousin and her boyfriend, later husband, showing up. And, that was the only kind of guest and the only kind of contact we had. And that had grown dysfunctional as well. I mean, it just, but there were still, it wasn't terribly dysfunctional. There were still there was the wait until all the bad people went to sleep. So my mom, my brother, myself, and my cousin, we would play cards into the night and get drunk and everything, and have a fantastic fucking time. But there were always her eventual husband didn't get along with either my mom or my dad in different ways. Was okay with me for a bit, but eventually, once I became kind of adult, no. It was like he had to be the top dog in whatever was going on. Which is funny because he didn't with his own family. I visited his family at one point. Things were more equal, but he just had to be kind of I don't know what it was, but and nobody could deal with him. So he became just put aside, except of course my cousin, who mainly was trying to placate him or trying to keep us from going at his throat or something. But it was just really weird. But then, when I went away to college, I went home for Christmas for a couple of years, but then I just started hanging out at school. Now, the thing is, I had people around me. I was living with housemates. Maybe most of them were gone. I had friends, some of whom were still in the area. There was one year where we did, before it was a word, the Friendsgiving type thing, where a bunch of us who were kind of stranded in Buffalo went and did Thanksgiving together. Never anything like that for Christmas. The only Christmas during that period, so I have both Thanksgiving and Christmas memories of being with, my first girlfriend, spending a Christmas together with her. And that would always be special, right? Sort of your first Christmas with someone, alone with them. And I tried to bring, some of the traditions that we had from my family, like the Christmas Eve tradition, having lots of fancy lunch meat and antipasto and cookies and all kind of stuff like that, champagne, um, where Christmas Eve was just sort of this party, even if it was a very small party. Um, and I tried the same with Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was kind of funny because I would always, my my parents, my mom did not do, she did a lot for Thanksgiving, but it didn't sink into me. None of that. I desired none of that except maybe some pie. But I liked the idea of celebrating it by having something sort of, so what I would do, and this is what I became hooked on, is a trailer trash Thanksgiving. I would buy like a frozen turkey breast, the boneless compressed thing, and mashed potatoes. I'd make them by hand because I mean, you can't get good mashed potatoes if you don't make them yourself, basically. And and a can of the canned cranberry sauce, and some stovetop stuffing, and just and peas were the main side dish. Um, and I mean, this just became sort of this thing, like, go out. Oh, we don't have anything for Thanksgiving. We should get something. Go out to the supermarket on, either Thanksgiving or on the shopping trip before. But too many times I can remember going out either Thanksgiving or the day before, just to get stuff. Stupid, this trailer trash Thanksgiving stuff, and then have it. And I remember those being very, very good experiences every time I did them. I did one with my last wife. As well. The first year we were here, don't think we did any in Phoenix of that. Phoenix didn't feel like in November it's still like 80 degrees out, man. But here, it definitely feels like Thanksgiving and Thanksgiving. It's rainy, it's cold. And then it's just so shocking how quickly time passes now. It's the addiction, man. I mean, it's like fucking heroin. Not that I've experienced heroin. Fortunately, I think. Never been big on painkillers, but I could see it now. Okay. Gotta swallow these damn things because I'm talking. Can't just spit them inside. Had to get a spittoon. We used to have one. Not me, but my dad had one back. We had all kind of just weird shit that he would pick up. Like I said, it was kind of like the Addams Family house in a lot of ways. Weird musical instruments around and stuff like that. So on the Christmases that I spent alone, I would make an effort to reach out. Not alone, but I was usually with someone. I would make an effort to reach out, and I would do this with birthdays and everything for a little while, but then it faded. So, like with my first wife, I did those fun, that trailer trash Thanksgiving thing. And we may have kept that up for a while, although I know very early on we ended up going and visiting her best friend for Thanksgiving for a few years. And then similarly with my psycho ex, we ended up going to her family for at least a Christmas or Thanksgiving, which was an interesting situation. Like her mom was always trying to catch us at something, We live together, we could be fucking any time. Why are you so worried that we might be like making out here? But yeah. So of course, we went out in the winter to fuck. Like, just behind some school or something. that was a crazy fucking relationship. But yeah, I mean, I miss her too. You know, she's dead too. Overdose. And it's kind of hard to remember, you know, because then with my first wife, things kind of mellowed out, but I think we made some attempt to have sort of a Christmas together every year. I can remember I would decorate our window. I would put lights up in the shape of a Christmas tree, like Christmas lights. And that made her so fucking happy. We never got a tree. I've never had a tree of my own in the house. Though, you know, all through my youth I did. It just, you know, seemed like too much of a hassle, too much of an expense. It's like getting a pumpkin, except much worse. And, but everything in that life sort of dimmed, right? Over time, a relationship sort of fades. There's sort of all this joy and wanting to bring joy to the other, and somehow everything just sort of slips into the routine, and it becomes harder and harder to break that routine. Like the routine takes grasp of your life, and it does in all things. It does in all things. It's just, it's so sad because those first couple years in a relationship, it feels like everything's new and different, and you know, still you're learning things and you're trying to form patterns, but the patterns, I don't know, this is me, I guess, and the people I choose to be with, but the patterns of exceptional things sort of fade away. And I honestly think a lot of it is not me, that it's the people I'm with, that they're impressed at first with maybe some of the stuff I do, but not that excited about the patterns. Like, I don't know. And on my own, I'm sure the hell not going to do anything. Now, what was weird though, you know, with my recently passed wife, not all that recent anymore, but is that excitement period was always more muted, and there was just a whole lot less, you know, it slipped into the routine so quickly and everything in ways that, I don't know, I mean, I fear that is the pattern that's going to happen, right? You know, my earlier loves were intense and almost throughout the extent of them, but we're talking a few years each at most, whereas, you know, with my first wife, there was enough time to get past those first few years and then into this sort of dull area. And then with my past wife, that dull area became everything. So in a lot of ways, you know, other than like, oh, hey, let's go out and look at Christmas lights, you know, which even that, I couldn't get my past wife to do if it meant getting home when it was dark, you know, if it meant going out when it might be dark, because I don't know why. She was okay going up and down the hill in the dark before, but somehow, I don't know, she just became more and more reticent towards that. Now, for this year, let me check my battery. I better swap it out. For this year, things are a little different. Last year, you know, I was without her for the first year, but there was nothing. You know, I couldn't even go out, really. if I so desired, and expect to see anything. Because although, there were shots and everything, the there there was kind of a mini lockdown. There was really kind of the vaxes had you know hadn't done sort of the hoped for job, and there was a season of COVID during the winter, and everything was kind of shut down again. Um, but this year, Christmas Eve today is falling on a Friday, and so is New Year's Eve, which I'm really not sure I want to do. But what that means is it's dance night, and uh, two of the DJs are going to be there. My favorite one's going to be there. And, so I'm going to be going out and dancing on Christmas Eve, which feels weird, but who knows, I mean, is it any weirder than what I've been doing, for the last several years, which is whatever my normal day is, right? I mean, I'll be off work. I was always off work in this period because I had excess days where I had to take a couple weeks off at the end of each year. And we always had additional days off, like fixed in. I think it was more than Christmas. I think we got Christmas Eve off too, but I don't know. I just know that I had to schedule the days that I wanted off a couple months ahead and say, well, yeah, we'll do that. But the idea of like, oh, I'm either going to be playing a game or sitting on the computer watching shit or, and probably alone, married and all. My life didn't change all that much. The only difference is my past life and I would have probably watched a couple of Christmas specials. That was sort of our big celebration or whatever that was left, because all we really did was every now and then, and it'd fall into like once every 2 months. Yeah, other than going shopping and whatever, which was regular out every 2 weeks. All we really did was maybe go for a little walk or a longer one. Sometimes they were long. But that was pretty damn seldom, unless there was some reason that she was stressed and couldn't cope, and then we went more often. Or our nightly dinner, which we'd spend watching documentaries or something, and then little bits of time in the kitchen or whatever. I mean, we really didn't. And then there was someone for me to bounce down to and talk to every now and then, which that's missing. But it's not like I had a terribly involved existence with her where we were hanging out and doing stuff very often. But with the dancing, again, that just feels like such an alien break. Just so weird, and I definitely have to make it. I was afraid I was making myself unwell enough that I couldn't go, but I'm kind of trying to restrain myself from such activity. Outside of that, just a little bit of news or whatever. So I was talking, about, hey, the monetization thing, and asked their opinions, and almost everyone, like I think I got one or two people who were like, well, I'm not sure how I feel about it or whatever. Now, I'm not sure, I don't know. I'm not sure how many people might have said, if I could have forced them at a gun to give me an answer, if more people would have said, nah, I'm not interested in that, but, whatever. Or, that would actually piss me off a little bit. I got only one. And that was like, hey, tell me what your ad block is, because I really don't want to see ads. And I won't watch if there are. And so I gave it to them, but, that might mean that they'll watch other better people now that they don't have to see ads. But turns out that I would have to do something that I'm not willing to do in order to take the monetization. It's basically I would have to set up a either I would have to get a phone to receive text messages, and I'm not sure that like sort of cheaper options like getting a textable number online would work, like getting a permanent one which costs a certain amount of money, a certain amount of money a year or whatever, just like a phone would. I'm not sure that would work. I'm not sure my Skype getting an incoming number would work, because recently, so sometimes when I have to sign on to something, there's sort of these, hey, free SMS services where you can grab a phone number and you can have it for maybe, a week or a month or whatever. But if you stop using it, it stops being yours. And then others that are just like, well, here's some numbers and you can monitor them for your security codes or whatever, which seems like a really bad idea to me, but okay. I tried using one of them just to sign up to a website, right? Not something where it's even important on my security, to protect money or anything. And that they said, no, this isn't an actual phone number. This is a VoIP line. I'm like, come on, man, why are you restricting? But obviously because it's possible to get these things and they're not at all secure. But here's the thing, what I was signing up for, was going to be a site that I didn't pay for. And I thought that a phone barrier to it was a really bad idea. I just wanted to explore a chatbot platform. And didn't, I'm not able to. This may change. I got an overwhelming response in terms of like, yeah, but it probably won't. But I also got a fairly heavy indication that it probably won't do me much good. And I'm not talking about money-wise. It won't do much good there either, and will actually cause a hassle because I'll have to keep track of this shit and put it on my taxes. But on the bright side, I can like write off cameras and stuff, which is kind of cool because it might just about cancel out. But if I buy cameras again, I mean, I don't know. When this camera dies, I may be done. But I don't know. Let's hope I die first. I don't think I can handle even a minor crisis. Like, I'm worried my computer's going to go or whatever. And I just like, and I should be able to handle it. Like, I should be transferring important stuff. I've done this before onto either an external drive or onto my wife's computer. So that, because I'm beginning to get like, first of all, I'm using fucking Windows 7 and apparently it's dying. Like, Windows 7's going away. But also, my computer's getting slow, which is a bad sign. And I really ought to just take that effort and say, hey, you got to move, your accounts and everything onto something else, just so it's on both, or just, write down all your passwords or something and get a printed copy of them in case they can't be retrieved easily. But there's a whole lot of those kinds of things, maybe less important, but shit like my wife's inheritance in Portugal, or I don't know if there's anything else on that level that I really should be taken care of. But I mean, there's just tons of these things, like my house, I'm letting it go to shit. I'm like leaving piles of shit everywhere. It's just my nature, and I don't have anybody to keep after me and say, yeah, it's fine that you're keeping 4 rooms as a mess, but can you at least like clean up your shit out of the living room? Yeah. All right. So, anyway, that is my tidings of Christmas joy. Fa la la.